Welcome to baseball seasons 1985. Diamond Royalty.
Go crazy, folks! Go crazy!
More than any other sport, baseball is rooted in history. There's something special in the battle between pitcher and batter, a timeless showdown at 60 feet 6 inches. The feats of both hurlers and hitters came to a peak in 1985.
Mattingly rips one down the line.
For 56 years, one of the game's greatest records had been Ty Cobb's all-time mark of 4,191 career hits. But since 1963, Pete Rose had piled up hit after hit. And by 1985, he began the season only 94 behind Cobb.
What the record means to me is that I'm just going to be the guy with the most hits. No more, no less. Cobb was a much better hitter. I'm going to get the most hits. We both hated to lose, and we both loved to play baseball.
Pete Rose keeps rolling along.
All season long, fans would be riveted by Rose's determined chase for immortality. Walter Johnson had held the career strikeout record since 1921, but by 1985, baseball had two vying for the crown.
The pitch, he struck him out. There it is.
Steve Carlton and Nolan Ryan both caught Johnson in 1983 and had passed the record back and forth ever since. In 1985, the race was on to see who would be the first to reach 4,000.
Strikeout for Ryan.
In 1985, there'd be even more magic on the mound, as 46-year-old knuckleballer Phil Necro and 40-year-old Tom Seaver were both approaching career win number 300. Seaver had begun his career at age 22 with the New York Mets, winning Rookie of the Year in 1967. Then 2 years later earning a Cy Young Award and 25 wins as the Mets won their first World Championship. In 1985, Met fans believed they had another young ace with that kind of potential, or maybe even more.
Fastball struck him out.
As a 19-year-old starter in 1984, Dwight Gooden had taken the lead by storm, setting a modern-day rookie record with 276 strikeouts. And a new all-time major league record by averaging over 11 strikeouts per 9 innings. In 1985, the kid they called Dr. K was ready to be recognized as more than just a strikeout artist.
I don't really like to be called a power pitcher, but a lot of people, compare me to a lot of power pitchers like Nolan Ryan, Steve Carter, Bob Gibson, those guys. Every time I'm out there, they're expecting a strikeout or something, and I just want to make a great pitcher.
Strike three, did it? He struck out the side.
To put their young star's future in the best possible hands, the Mets had traded for the NL starting all-star catcher 4 years running, Gary Carter.
People thought Carter was the missing part. He was a special player. I mean, he's a guy who played hurt, he played hard, and he performed dramatically. He was a wonderful, wonderful player.
On opening day against the Mets division rivals, the St. Louis Cardinals, New York got its first good look at the best catcher in the league.
As the game progressed and we ended up being tied after regulation, I stepped up to that plate.
Last half of the 10th inning. Curve, well hit, deep to left field. Way back, it may go. Gone, a home run.
My teammates greeted me at home plate, and then all I could hear was the fans chanting my name.
When he hit that home run on opening day, it pretty much said, we have all we need to be the best team in the division.
New Yorkers were delighted with the combination of youth and experience, and the Mets became the city's top draw, something that didn't sit well with Yankees owner George Steinbrenner. After just 16 games, the boss took out his frustration on a New York baseball icon, the Yankee manager Yogi Berra.
George was a little bit impatient. George Field, he done went out and got Dave Winfield, we got Don Mattingly, we got yourself, and we got Griffith. We got a team that it is no way we shouldn't be 20 games in the first place. So he ended up fired. I got no chance to play for my hero. Few games, because I'm sorry. And here come Billy.
Enter Billy Martin, who was brought back for his fourth stint as the pinstripe skipper. But even miracle worker Martin would have a tough road ahead. Don Mattingly finished the month with exactly 0 homers. More importantly, the newly acquired Ricky Henderson sprained his ankle and appeared in only 8 games all month, batting .176. At month's end, the Yankees were in dead last in the AL East. To see who was on top, you had to look far to the north. where baseball's hottest team was warming the hearts of all Canada. In the AL East, Billy Martin wasn't the only familiar face returning to manage. In Baltimore, the Orioles' legendary Earl Weaver came out of retirement in mid-June, but couldn't recapture the old magic, and the Orioles never challenged for the division. That top perch belonged to Toronto. While the traditional powers struggled, the upstart Blue Jays would make their first serious run at the title. Manager Bobby Cox's only established star was ace pitcher Dave Steve, who'd been the American League starter in the All-Star game in both '83 and '84.
Dave Steve always had great stuff. Hard slider, good fastball, and he was intimidating on the mound. He wasn't afraid to get hitters off the plate, and he was like a bulldog.
Steve would lead the American League in ERA in 1985. By the middle of May, the Blue Jays were alone atop the AL East.
What a play!
Led by a young outfield that was the envy of the American League. 3 25-year-olds with all the tools. George Bell in left, Lloyd Mosby in center, and Jesse Barfield in right.
We had a great outfield. Mosby could steal you some bases, and George could take you deep. Jesse had one of the greatest throwing arms out there.
While the Blue Jays were a novelty atop the East, the Royals were a fixture atop the AL West, looking to make their 7th trip to the playoffs. Leading the way was their incomparable third baseman, George Bret.
When you thought of the Royals, you thought of George. No doubt George was, the heart and soul of the club. When it got hot, when we were in a crisis, we knew that George was always there for us.
Beyond Bret, the Royals lineup was less imposing. The rest of the league caught on, intentionally walking Bret more times in '85 than any American League batter since Ted Williams in 1957. Unable to score many runs, the Royals' fate in 1985 would hang largely on the young arms of their starting pitchers.
Struck him out.
Including free-spirited 21-year-old Bret Saberhagen.
He's a little bit of a flake, which I kind of like a little bit. He has a good time, but he's also very, very serious and very tense when he gets that ball and goes out on the mound. He's got a chance to be an outstanding pitcher.
When he came to spring training, he was just some little skinny kid. He weighed about 160 pounds and, didn't have any facial hair. And all of a sudden, he kind of caught everybody's eye little by little.
While the Royals were still looking for their first World Series title in 1985, the oldest team in the league was taking charge in their division. The California Angels had 7 regulars aged 34 and older, including Reggie Jackson and Bob Boone. The oldest of them all was the 39-year-old first baseman Rod Carew, an all-star in every one of his 18 previous seasons. In 1985, Carew became the 16th major leaguer to collect 3,000 hits in a career.
There's a drive to left field, base hit. There's number 3,000 for Carew.
3,000 for Rod Carew, and his teammates are coming out on the field to congratulate him.
Carew's milestone came on the same day as that of another future Hall of Famer, Tom Seaver.
Seaver is ready to work now to Don Baylor, and it's a high fly ball. It should be playable. Nichols is moving over. Nichols is there. The ball game is over. Seaver has won 300. He has become the 17th man in the history of baseball to win 300 games.
Later in 1985, Phil Niekro reached the same milestone.
Gunning for number 300. Lifetime wins. That's it! Holy cow! Strikeout gets his 300th career win.
While Niekro and Seaver cemented their places in history, a pitcher half their age would make his own mark in 1985. In just his second year, the Mets' 20-year-old pitcher Dwight Gooden had become the most exciting player in the league.
Electric. He had electric stuff, and when he pitched, whether it was at home or on the road, there was a buzz.
We wanted to be there in case the incredible happened. And the incredible was more likely with Dwight Gooden in 1985 than with any pitcher since Koufax.
Even Sandy Koufax himself fell under Gooden's spell, saying, "I'd rather have his future than my past."
He was so good. It was a joke. I don't think anyone could have been better than Doc was in '85. He had a fastball no one else had, mixed with a curveball that no one else had.
Composure is the word I think about with him, because that year, with all the fuss, and when you faced him, the world was watching. And you know what? Didn't bother him at all.
Jimmy Fry, when he was the manager of the Cubs, fellow with a microphone, says, "So Jim, Dwight Gooden was quite good today. What do you think of the young man's poise?" He puts his microphone out, and Jim says, Poise. I'm 53 years old. I've got poise. What I don't have is a fastball and a curveball that can kill everybody.
Gooden had the Mets feeling like world beaters. Their greatest challenge in the NL East in 1985 would be the St. Louis Cardinals. The Redbirds built their team around speed and defense, playing Whitey ball, named after manager Whitey Herzog, and best personified by center fielder Willie McGee, who would steal 56 bases while winning the batting title and a Gold Glove.
Whitey put together a ball club conducive to our ballpark. He wanted to put together a ball club with speed, guys that could hit the ball on the ground and run. And then we had Big Jack Clark in the middle to try to salvage things at times when necessary.
Jack Clark had come over in an off-season trade with more career homers than the rest of the Cards' 1985 regular lineup combined. But the key addition to the roster was a little-known speedster who didn't even make his big league debut until the second week of the season.
The throw is wide, and he's safe at second base.
Vince Coleman set a rookie record with 110 stolen bases, the third highest total in modern history.
Going into the ball game, your thing was to get on base. It was so much fun by being on that team, because we was playing as though we was playing in the park or when you was in high school. And here we are at a major league setting, and it was almost like a track meet every day.
There's a rundown play to beat all rundown plays.
As exciting as they were on the bases, the Cardinals of 1985 were that rarest of teams that was equally exciting to watch in the field. And it all started with the Wizard of Oz.
Play by Ozzie.
The team that they put on that field at that time might have been the best team as far as range in the history of baseball. Guys like Ozzie Smith and Terry Pennington on the left side, and center field of Coleman and McGee. These guys could fly. It was unbelievable.
Benefiting from the standout defense was staff ace Joaquin Andujar, who was 15-4 by the All-Star break.
Swings and misses, goes down.
More disappointing was lefty John Tudor. With his third team in 3 years, Tudor looked like he was becoming a journeyman pitcher, starting 1-7 for the Cardinals. But a phone call from his high school catcher turned his season around.
It mentioned something to me, that a little part of my delivery that had always been there wasn't there at this particular time. And I just worked at it and changed it, and I think that changing that just kind of changed a few other things, and things have just kind of fallen into place since then.
On June 3rd, Tudor won his second game of the year, defeating the Astros' Nolan Ryan. Both pitchers would go on to make history during the 1985 season.
Well, the story in tonight's game, 6 strikeouts by Nolan Ryan. He needs 1 strikeout to be the first man in the history of this great game to have 4,000 strikeouts.
The Mets' Danny Heap would have the dubious distinction of being linked with Ryan in history.
This crowd is getting up all the way around. Breaking ball, and that's it. Strikeout number 4,000 for Nolan Ryan.
Baseball's summer of 1985 had more than its share of once-in-a-lifetime moments. On June 11th, the Phillies' Von Hayes became the first major leaguer ever to blast 2 home runs in the first inning of a game, leading the Phillies to a 26-7 hammering of the Mets.
Right on out of here, a grand slam home run, his second homer of the inning.
On July 4th in Atlanta, the Mets were involved in some more bizarre baseball. After 3 rain delays, the calendar had moved on to July 5th, with the Mets taking an 11-10 lead to the bottom of the 18th, when the Braves had to send pitcher Rick Camp up to the plate with his career batting average of .060.
We had no pinch hitters left. We had used up all of our bench, so there was nobody left to pinch hit.
And he is at the deep left. He goes back. It is gone. Holy cow. Oh, my goodness. I don't believe it. That certifies this game as the wackiest, wildest, most improbable game in history.
The only home run of Camp's 9-year career sent the game into the 19th inning. at which point he promptly took the mound and surrendered 5 runs. The Mets ultimately won 16-13.
And then there was a fireworks show after the game, which probably should have been canceled because it was almost 4 o'clock in the morning when the game ended. We woke up the entire neighborhood.
In the summer of 1985, the most explosive player in the league was the Yankees' Rickey Henderson.
He dominated games as much as you would ever see a single player dominate games.
Henderson became the first major leaguer with 80 steals and 20 homers in a season, and the only everyday player since 1939 to total more runs scored than games played.
That's the main thing. That's why I love to get on base so much, because I have the guys that can knock me in. You got the big guys that are going to make contact. I'm usually going to score a lot more runs just by the guys that are hitting behind me that can't drive the ball in.
The key man batting behind Henderson was the defending AL batting champion, Don Mattingly.
Regular players, you might have a period of time where you're in a zone. You might carry the team for 2 to 3 days. If you're an all-star, maybe a week. And if you're a Hall of Famer, maybe 2 weeks. And Don Mattingly was in a zone that whole year.
And Mattingly hits one out of here.
Mattingly's 145 RBIs were the most by a Yankee since Joe DiMaggio in 1948.
Mattingly was phenomenal. They were just stupid numbers. I mean, the stuff he put up, and he was just so consistent, and he competed, he battled his brains out against you.
Holy cow, Mattingly is unbelievable.
It wasn't Don Mattingly was a great player during the mid-'80s. It was Donnie Baseball. Across the game, not only in the American League, but the game, Don Mattingly was baseball.
And he turns the 2.
Mattingly, Henderson, and the Yankees stormed out of last place in May and were bearing down on the Blue Jays in the East. By late summer, pennant races and once-in-a-lifetime moments would be happening in all 4 divisions across the major leagues. In Cincinnati, Pete Rose continued to chase down Ty Cobb's record of 4,191 career hits. By September, the whole city was counting down together, and Reds owner Marge Schott had planned a big celebration at Riverfront Stadium for the big moment. Trouble was the Reds were on a road trip, and their player-manager kept playing and kept getting hits. Soon Rose had 4,189, 3 shy of setting the new record.
Rose lines one, base hit.
Rose platooned himself with Tony Perez, playing himself against righties and Perez against lefties. On the last game of the trip, left-hander Steve Trout was scheduled to start against the Reds, meaning Rose would have the day off and would return home to try to break the record.
For the game, they come down and told me that Trout wasn't pitching and Patterson was, and I had to put myself in the lineup because that's the way it was. You can't say, well, I'm going to save it and get the hit in Cincinnati.
Off of right-handed Reggie Patterson, Rose singled in the first for number 4190. In the 5th came another single to tie Cobb at 4191. Then came a rain delay, and the manager's phone rang in the visitors' clubhouse.
Marge called him and asked him to take himself out the game. And Pete, being the person that he is, he was like, no, I'm going to play. That's the way he played.
The delay lasted 2 hours, sending most Cub fans home, record or no record.
And then Pete came up, I think, in the 7th inning and hit an absolute bullet toward the hole at shortstop. A ball that maybe with somebody else playing shortstop, he would have beaten it out for the record-breaking hit.
I got lucky, or I'd have broke the record in front of about 1,200 people. Well, Marge would have been really mad.
On September 11th, with a righty on the mound against the Reds at Riverfront, the stage was finally set.
A standing room only crowd in Cincinnati on its feet. First inning, Pete Rose against Eric Shaw. 2-1 pitch from Shaw in the left center. There it is. Rose has eclipsed Cobb. That's number 4,192.
I carried on just like it was regular business. I made the big turn at first. Realistically, if you want to know the truth, if it had been 1 out or 2 outs, I'd have went to second, and I'd have made it. I'd have made it because I knew when the ball hit the turf, it was going to bounce up. Martinez had to jump up, and no one's going to jump up and catch a ball and throw me out at second. It's just not going to happen. But because there's no outs and I'm weeding off the game, you have to play the game the way it's supposed to be played. When I'm at first base from that ovation was the only time in my life
I was ever on a baseball field. I didn't know what the hell to do. I didn't know what to do. And I don't think anybody in their right mind ever had expected anybody to stand up for 9 minutes and give you an ovation.
And for him to cry like he did, which Pete Rose never, ever did about anything, it was just a night to remember.
It broke me down, but it took 9 minutes to break me down. If they had sat down after 7, I'd have never broke down. But it took that extra 2 minutes. Then you start thinking about everybody responsible for you being there. Your Little League coaches, they're gone. Your high school coach, Mr. Knorr, he's gone. Some of your minor league coaches, they're gone. Your father, who mentored you, he's gone. And you start thinking about all those guys, that's what brings the tears to your eyes, because you're thinking about all the people that should be there that couldn't be there because I played so damn long.
With Cobb's time-tested record finally broken, fans could turn to the exciting pennant races of 1985. Only in the NL West was there a runaway. The Dodgers pitching staff, boasting the major's lowest ERA, included Fernando Valenzuela, at 24 years of age, already an All-Star 5 times, and in his first season as a full-time starter, Oro Hershiser.
Pitch, swing and a miss, and he struck him out.
In the NL East, Doc Gooden finished even stronger than he had started, incredibly allowing no earned runs in all of September. But as the Mets chased the Cardinals, St. Louis was witnessing its own astonishing pitching display.
Swing and a miss, he struck him out.
On June 1st, John Tudor had 1 win and 7 losses. Over the rest of the season, Tudor won 20 games and lost only 1, throwing 10 complete game shutouts over his last 26 starts. Tudor's Cards and Gooden's Mets were on a collision course for October, while in the Bronx, the Yankees were on fire, cutting the Blue Jays' lead in the AL East from 9.5 to 1.5 games.
Cassie at the plate. Right field, way back, gone.
Never before had both New York teams been so close, so late in the season. But the Yankees could never quite catch Toronto. Though Mattingly finished strong and was named league MVP, the Blue Jays kept their hold on first place from the middle of May on to win the franchise's first ever division title. As for the Mets and Cardinals, that race stayed hot until the bitter end. On October 1st in St. Louis, with the Cards leading by 3 games and trying to wrap it up, John Tudor shut the Mets out for 10 innings, but the Mets didn't yield a run either, costing Tudor what would have been his 11th complete game shutout of the season. In the 11th, with Ken Daly on the mound for St. Louis, Darryl Strawberry came up for the Mets. Strawberry's towering homer cut the division lead to 2. Ultimately, the Cardinals outlasted the Mets, claiming the NL East with 101 wins, most in the majors in 1985.
And the Cardinals have won the Eastern Division.
St. Louis was headed back to the playoffs. Meanwhile, across the state, the other Missouri team was in a final week showdown of its own to see if the Royals or the Angels would be advancing to the postseason. The 1985 Angels held first place for most of the season, as many as 7.5 games ahead of the Royals in July.
Backhands to Grant, and they double him up.
But by late September, the lead had slipped to 1. A 4-game set in KC would settle it.
I feel pretty good. We've got 4 games left. We're even, Steven. We've got 4 games at home.
Hauser had confidence. He also had George Bret.
Facing him, and most left-handers didn't like facing him, and I was no different. And I hit a home run to straightaway center field, and all of a sudden it was like, man, we can beat these guys.
Deep to right center field.
Well, George, I can honestly say was the best clutch player that I ever played with, and probably the best clutch hitter that I've ever seen.
During that last week of the season, Bret had 5 homers and 11 RBIs as KC took 3 of 4 and clinched the division.
George Bret, he did it.
In the ALCS, the Royals would face the Blue Jays. Toronto had been the best team in the league all season and rode into the best-of-7 series on an emotional high.
Game 1, just tremendous excitement in the ballpark. First playoff game ever, and the crowd was excited.
Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney threw out the first ball.
I put it together that day pretty good, getting ahead of the hitters. pretty much just shut him down. It's just a great feeling to win that first one and be on our way to possibly going to the World Series.
In Game 2, Toronto pulled it out on the bottom of the 10th to take a 2-0 lead.
That might do it. The throw from Smith. The Blue Jays win it.
The loss was a record 11th straight in the postseason for the Royals manager Dick Howser. But the skipper's confidence in himself and his ball club never wavered.
He used to have an expression, play the game hard, play the game right. We got the talent here, and as a result, we really didn't panic.
We can get it going. One game can turn this thing around. Tonight could be that game.
And then we get back to Kansas City for Game 3, and I had the best single game I ever had in my life.
A ball and a strike to Bret. Well hit, deep right. If it stays fair, the Royals are in front, and they are.
They pitched to him, which was outstanding for us, because he was the guy we obviously always counted on. But you knew that other teams knew that too.
Bret almost single-handedly built and protected a 2-0 lead. And after Saberhagen surrendered 5 runs in the 5th, Bret came up again.
Wilson at first, nobody out. Well hit to left center. Back goes Mosby, along with Bell. Forget it! Home run Bret!
Bret's second homer of the game tied the score. He finished 4 for 4 with 4 runs scored and 3 RBIs in the Royals' 6-5 win. In Game 4, the Royals took a 1-0 lead into the 9th, but couldn't hold it.
It's fair, and it's Toronto in front. 1 run in, and they're waving the second one in.
The Jays led 3-1. Needing to win 3 straight to avoid elimination, the Royals gave the ball to Danny Jackson for the first of 3 must-win games.
Jimmy Quirk always came to me when I'm stretching on the table, and he said, well, DJ, don't worry about it. You pitch a bad game, we go home.
Seemingly impervious to pressure, Jackson promptly sent the series back to Canada.
This might do it. Balboni, we're going to Toronto.
In Game 6, again it was Bret who led the way.
In the air to right center. Back goes Mosby, along with Barfield. It is gone. Now, why would you want to pitch to him?
A 5-3 win got the Royals to Game 7. The Blue Jays didn't seem ready.
I didn't think I was going to have to pitch again. And, they battled back, though. Next thing you know, it was 3-3, and I was getting the start for the last game.
The bases are loaded. Sundberg is the hitter. In the air to right, Barfield going back. Look out for the wind. It hits the top of the fence, and I believe it's still in play. Yes, it is. 2 runs will score. 3 runs score. It's a triple for Sundberg.
The Royals catcher Jim Sundberg got the big hit, and the Blue Jays would never recover.
This may do it for the Royals. For the second time in their history, they're on their way to the World Series.
We just never quit, and as a result of that, you win ball games.
The Royals became only the 5th team ever to come all the way back from a 3-1 deficit in a 7-game series. Next up, the Fall Classic. In 1985, the Dodgers had the most dominating pitching staff in the majors, with a team ERA under 3. And in Games 1 and 2 of the 1985 NLCS, a pair of LA aces, Fernando Valenzuela and Oral Hershiser, quickly put the Cards down 2-0.
3-2 in the count to Jack Clark. Fastball got him.
Whenever Fernando and Hershiser was hitting their spots, it made it very tough to hit. But we was able to come together once we came to Busch Stadium.
From the moment Vince Coleman stepped into the box to lead off Game 3, Whitey Ball returned with a vengeance.
Swings and a line drive into left is a base hit. Coleman, there goes the runner. They pitch out, the throw, safe at second base.
Pick off play, and it goes into right center, and there's nobody there. Landro gets it, and here comes Coleman to score. McGee to third.
Coleman got St. Louis off to an early lead. An 18-game winner, Danny Cox, made it stand up.
Lewis struck him out.
The Cardinals won 4-2 and now trailed LA 2-1. But then a rainstorm and bad news for St. Louis.
We were standing literally on the first base line, and my back was to this tarp, and it rolled all the way up to my hip. And they tried to lift it off, but they couldn't, so they had to re-roll it back off. And we went into the training room, and I cracked my tibia.
With their igniter shelved for the rest of the series, the Cards look to reserve Tito Landrum to provide the spark.
Swing and a ground ball. Shortstop can't get it. Base hit. Into left center. A run scores. Cedeno for third. Safe.
Landrum triggered a 9-run rally that came in classic Whitey Ball fashion without an extra base hit. The Cardinal reserve had 4 hits in all as St. Louis evened the series with a 12-2 win. In Game 5, it was tied in the bottom of the ninth when Dodger reliever Tom Niedenfuer challenged the switch-hitting Ozzie Smith, who had never hit a home run batting left-handed in his entire 8-year career.
Smith corks one into right down the line. It may go.
On the way home, I had a chance to hear the replay.
Go crazy, folks. Go crazy.
Go crazy, folks. Go crazy. The Cardinals have won the game by a score of 3-2 on a home run by the Wizards.
And, of course, the writers all come in after the game, and did it surprise you? And, of course, I didn't know what to say, so I had to come up with a one-liner. I said, no, I said he was due.
Well, it's good to come back to our ballpark. I just wish we could have been 3-2 rather than 2-3.
After being down 2-0 coming home and now being up 3-2, I feel pretty good.
That feeling would be short-lived, however, as the Dodgers would come out swinging.
Base hit to center field. Dodgers lead.
Joaquin Andujar struggled for the Cards, and the Dodgers led 4-1. But St. Louis rallied against Oral Hershiser in the 7th, and Lasorda called his top reliever Tom Niedenfuer into a situation that had striking similarities to the one that ended Game 5.
All right, here's Ozzie. Deja vu. The 1-1 pitch. Driven to right field and deep. Marshall going back, and would you believe it? Ozzie has went off the base of the wall. Here's McGee. The game is tied, and Smith's at third.
Smith had delivered again. But with rookie reliever Todd Worrell pitching in the bottom of the 8th, the Dodgers' Mike Marshall struck back.
High fly ball in the right center field. He didn't get quite enough of it, I don't think. Van Slyke to the wall. It is a home run! Oh, did the ball carry?
Niedenfuer was still on the mound with the Dodgers ahead by 1 in the 9th. With McGee on third, Ozzie on second, and first base open, the Dodgers would opt to pitch to Jack Clark.
Jack Clark had struck out maybe 2 innings prior to that. Niedenfuer had threw 3 fastballs by him.
2-2 pitch to Clark. Swung on and missed. He struck him out.
He came into the dugout and he said, please, guys, whatever you do, give me another opportunity at this guy. I will take him deep. At that time, we called it a big fly. He says, I will hit a big fly off of him.
Niedenfuer ready. The pitch. A drive to left field, and Jack Clark has hit a 3-run homer.
You know, to see him hit the ball and take those steps toward our dugout, not toward first base, but toward our dugout, and to tell us that here's the big fly that I told you guys I was going to hit, and this is something I'll never forget.
With the Cardinals' victory in Game 6, the World Series was now set. St. Louis and Kansas City, 2 teams from opposite ends of the state of Missouri, would face off in what was called the I-70 series. But the Cardinals would still be without their Rookie of the Year, Vince Coleman.
Losing Vince was a big loss. We couldn't play baseball like we were played all season.
But if the Cardinals couldn't run at top speed, they could still pitch and play the field with the best of them.
1-2 pitch is lifted in the air to medium deep left field and foul ground, and Pendleton with some deja vu as Schoenberg comes to the plate and is out.
Terry Pendleton helped John Tudor win the opener. In Game 2, the Royals' Charlie Lebrand nursed a 2-0 lead till there were 2 out in the 9th.
He swings and grounds it into left field for a base hit. So McGee scores.
Clark's hit made it a 2-1 game, and the Cardinals kept coming.
And that's punched down the right field line, and that is a fair ball.
Landrum's double put runners at second and third. Liebrandt walked Cesar Cedeno intentionally to load the bases. Though AL save champ Dan Quisenberry was loose in the pen, Hauser left Liebrandt in to face Terry Pendleton.
And it's hit down the line in left field, and the Cardinals will take the lead as Clark scores, Landrum scores. They're waving Cedeno in. The throw to the plate is not in time.
Pendleton's bases-clearing double gave the Cardinals a 4-2 win and a 2-0 lead in the series. History was seemingly not with the Royals. No team had ever won a fall classic after losing the first 2 games at home.
If you've got good players, why panic?
The Royals had lost the first 2 games of the 1985 World Series at home, but manager Dick Hauser and his team had been down before.
Dick never panicked. You know, whatever the situation was, he would just say, "We'll get it done."
So runners at the corners now. He hits a high drive to deep left field, and Landrum goes back, but watches this one go out of there. And it's 4-0 Kansas City.
Down 2-0 in the series, the Royals would have to get it done in St. Louis. And after staking their young ace to a comfortable lead, Saberhagen cruised to a win.
Tonight belonging to Saberhagen.
But Game 4 belonged to the Cardinals shutout king John Tudor, who blanked the Royals 3-0. St. Louis was now 1 win away from the title. The champagne was on ice, and the city was ready to celebrate.
Getting into Game 5, I'm walking around St. Louis, and I see all these World Series champions, St. Louis Cardinals, and it was my wife and I turned to my wife and I said, well, they haven't even won the game yet, and they're already considering themselves champions. I said, it's not going to happen. We still felt that we could win.
For the second straight series, Danny Jackson would start a must-win Game 5, but it was the Royals' offense that would be the story early on.
Now they are waving in Sunburn. Here comes the dangerous throw. They won't get him. Nieto must have missed the tag. And he'll argue, and here comes Herzog.
The Cardinals quickly became frustrated in Game 5, while the Royals methodically put up runs.
That's hit toward the gap in right center field, and that one is up the gap. And beyond Villano will come to score. So will Smith. Wilson has at least 3, and he will stop at third with a triple. It is 4-1.
Danny Jackson went the distance for the Royals in a 6-1 win, and they returned home for Game 6, still trailing 3 games to 2.
And Kansas City, here we come again.
In Game 6, Danny Cox and Charlie Liebrandt kept the game scoreless into the 8th, before St. Louis pinch hitter Brian Harper pushed across a run.
A little soft looper, and it's into center for a base hit, and the Cardinals take the lead.
In my mind, the game was over for us. With the defense that we played and with the guys that we had in the bullpen, we felt like this game was over.
Rookie reliever Todd Worrell faced pinch hitter George Orta to start the 9th, and what followed became the turning point of the series.
Little sliver to the right side. Worrell races over to cover. The throw doesn't get him. Worrell got to the bag, and an argument here, and here comes Herzog.
First base umpire Don Denkinger made one of the most scrutinized calls in baseball history.
Well, if you were there, it looked like he came off the bag. It happened fast, and it wasn't until you could slow it down, freeze frame it, and show the picture that his foot was on the bag.
After that call, the Cardinals came unglued.
Denkinger always gets blamed for it, but that didn't mean Jack Clark couldn't catch a pop-up.
And Clark comes over to the dugout with Porter, and Clark doesn't know where he is.
That didn't mean that Darryl Porter had to get him past the ball.
That gets away from Porter, and the runners move up.
With the bases loaded, pinch hitter Dane Ord came to the plate with a chance to send this series to a Game 7. The Royal Reserve became a hero with a broken bat and a broken nose.
I don't know if you guys ever noticed, I ran to him so hard and so fast, and I jumped up and my right shoulder hit him in the face. And all of a sudden I saw blood coming out, and then I kind of told everybody to stop, you know, see if Dane's okay. And then as soon as we all stopped, he started yelling again, so we all started hitting him again.
Meanwhile, the Cardinals couldn't stop thinking about the controversial play that started the rally.
In so many ways, we felt like the World Series should have been over, and that an umpire took the World Series from him. Good excuse. I don't believe that, but at the time, I think I was guilty of believing that, like everybody else.
We came out that seventh game, and I can't explain it, but I think it was the feeling on our side that it was over, that we were going to win. I don't know. We seemed to feel that they knew that too.
Even with John Tudor on the mound, it soon felt like it was just a matter of time.
And Motley drills it to deep left field, but hooking again, and that one is foul.
Darryl Motley almost broke the ice. Then, one pitch later, the Royals took the lead for good.
Balboni is going, and the pitch is again drilled to left field, hooking down the line, and
The hitting barrage had begun, and Tudor would be gone in the third.
I'd say we started celebrating that game when it was about 6-7-0 in the fifth.
We're up big. I can remember George on the bench saying, let's get this thing over with. Let's celebrate. Everybody start making outs. Let's get this thing over with.
By the time it was 9-0 in the fifth, the Cards couldn't get anyone out. Herzog looked to Joaquin Andahar to put out the fire, but he only fanned the flames.
I called down the bullpen, and I said, Joaquin, you're the only guy I got down there. I brought him in, and he threw a borderline strike. Denkinger, of course, had a bad night because everybody in the world knew he missed that play at first base. He goes out and starts chewing Joaquin out. And then I went out and I told him down, I said, what's the matter? I said, get back behind the plate. He said, if you'd have done your job last night, we wouldn't be here tonight. And I got kicked out.
Whitey's gone. You can see that coming.
We went in the clubhouse and sitting in my office. All of a sudden, here comes Joaquin. He got kicked out. It might have been the worst night I've ever spent in managing a baseball team.
It was the best of times for the Royals, for after 7 playoff appearances in 10 years, they would finally have their title. In winning their first and still only World Series championship, the Royals became the only team ever to come back to win after being down 3-1 twice in a single postseason. And as for George Bret, who had played the game with unsurpassed passion, team spirit, and skill for a decade, it was his crowning moment. The very next season, Royals' fortunes took a tragic turn, as their beloved manager Dick Howser left the team having been diagnosed with a brain tumor and died the following year at age 51. George Bret played until 1993, his 21st Major League season, all as a Kansas City Royal. Bret would become a first-ballot Hall of Famer, joining other 1985 notables Tom Seaver, Phil Niekro, Nolan Ryan, and Rod Carew. As for 1985's most celebrated record setter, Pete Rose, he would play one more season, finishing his career with 4,256 hits, a record that still stands. 1985 was a magical summer when the generation's most talented pitcher made the future seem unlimited, and a team that embodied the true spirit of the game was crowned its champion.